Hey there folks, welcome to Spectrum Pulse. We talk about music, movies, art, and culture, and today, it's a big one. We're going to be talking about the newest album from Cody Jinks called Lifers. So I'm not going to claim to be ahead of the curve when it came to covering Cody Jinks back in 2016. I was aware of his name and his grassroots following and a couple of his projects, especially his excellent album Less Wise, but when I was going into I'm Not the Devil right before I took off on vacation for Spain and Portugal, I was expecting a pretty damn solid Texas country record, and that's effectively what I got. Still pretty great, but nothing that blew my mind. And then it seemed like the floodgates burst open, and Cody Jinks' name started getting passed around a fair bit more beyond just the indie country and Texas country circuits. And I can tell you right now, it didn't have much at all to do with me. This is on him. No, if there was an unsung strength of I'm Not the Devil, it was how Cody Jinks leveraged the thickness and dramatic heft of his sound with an approach to melodic hooks that honestly reminded me a little bit of Garth Brooks in terms of composition in the melodies, and I intend that as a compliment. I might gravitate to his rougher textures on his earlier projects like Less Wise and 30, but I'm Not the Devil balanced out a lot of that with some of his best ever hooks, and it was a real grower of a record, and that got people to take serious attention. He moved a surprising number of units back in 2016, and given how much he's risen, it's hard not to think that he's on the cusp of a serious grassroots breakthrough like Sturgill Simpson to really rival the majority of the indie scene right now. So you can bet I was eagerly anticipating his follow-up this year, Lifers, which Critical Buzz did not place as his best album, but still pretty great all the same. Alright, still cautiously optimistic here, so how'd it turn out? Well, here's the thing. Like the last time I reviewed Cody Jinks, I got the feeling that there's not really much for me to add here. Cody Jinks' lane is starting to feel pretty well trod for him and a lot of the veterans of his content. And while there's a little bit more experimentation on this project when it comes to song topics and production, there are more points where he will swing bigger and then kind of miss, hence the review saying that it's not quite his best. But Lifers still really is damn solid. The sort of burnished, high-concept Texas country rife with Cody Jinks' musings and introspection that makes it a very easy project for me to like, if not entirely love. Good album, but not quite great. And a big part of this is Cody Jinks himself. He's got that rich baritone that's capable of selling a lot of big emotions, but to his credit, he knows enough to either lean into his grizzled, gruffer vibe, or potentially ease back into the more subtle restraint to let the writing and the melody sell the message without overplaying his hand. Sure, he will recruit more soulful, gospel backing singers for Holy Water, but it fits the vibe and it never really flies over the top as it very well could. But here's where we encounter an issue that will crop up in a much bigger way later on, and that is the vocal production. Namely, how it can feel really inconsistent even within the songs on the album. Earlier cuts start sliding towards lo-fi near the outros of the songs, and then by the time we get somewhere between I Love You and I'm Leaving, there's so much reverb layered onto his vocals pushed a little bit further back in the mix that it just got kind of distracting, especially when you couple it with a much more burnished acoustic strumming and electric guitar close to the front of the mix. It didn't quite mesh together or emphasize his strengths. And it's not just there. The unnecessary reverb slips back on the 7th floor, but while I get the sharper live vocals, they do have a certain gritty appeal, and they do kind of mostly fit with songs like Desert Wind with the seedier groove and the darker guitar tones. The blending just feels ever so slightly off in comparison with how artists like Lindy Ortega or Sturgill Simpson have done that live vocal pickup in the past. And then when you go back to 7th floor, where the backing vocals are actively cleaner than his and really most of the rest of the mix, again, if you're paying attention, it gets distracting. But that raises questions with the mixing as a whole, where you can tell that Cody Jinks and his producers were stepping a little outside their comfort zone to accommodate a broader range of sounds. But the results are kind of inconsistent, especially when you take a look at the rhythm section. Right from the start of the record, the snares sound really compressed, the deeper percussion and kick drums sound really quite blown out and overemphasized in the mix, and the bass consistently lacks any sort of definition to supplement the groove. And these are three choices that unfortunately draw attention to the groove's timbre in the mix and then consistently underwhelms me, especially when that's not really territory that needed to change all that much coming off of I'm Not the Devil. Yes, the grooves could be a little bit ragged there, but they felt more natural blended into the mix. But the blending on most of this album feels a little bit off as a whole. I like the pedal steel, the electric guitar, and even hints of the organ and saloon piano in order to flesh out the melody, but it's hard to ignore how they can feel just a bit compressed on certain songs, a shade too crisp to actually clip some edges of the mix, which really isn't excusable on songs where Cody Jinks is not going for more of that distortion or edge, or songs where I'm not sure what edge he's looking to cultivate, with a grainy pickup on 7th Floor that doesn't really match the tone of the song or anything else going on. Going back to Desert Wind, I can mostly excuse it, as with the title track, which definitely gives the bass a little bit more definition, and the song's content can handle the rougher vibe, but it's a little less excusable for how slightly tinny the acoustics can feel on Can't Quit Enough. And again, what's frustrating here is how it is inconsistent. Big Last Name fleshed out a bouncy Texas country stomper with crowd sounds, and it sounds absolutely fine, as does the excellent mid-tempo Colorado, or the more gentle touches of reverb and keening pedal steel in his cover of Stranger. That's a perfect example of that sort of experimentation really working, as are the cellos that flesh out Headcase. But messing with this side of production can be kind of high risk, low reward, especially when it might come at the expense of the instrumental experimentation or solos that I was hoping that Cody Jinks would bring in following after I'm Not the Devil. But really, all this could have been redeemed by sharp songwriting, and here's the thing, I'm well aware that Cody Jinks' style of writing tends towards broad arch language, something I might have picked up when he was back in metal, but it helps make his songs feel bigger than they actually are, especially ballads like Colorado. He's a big personality, and that lends weight to the questions of faith on Holy Water or Headcase, or the crises that come up in chasing dreams that might come up wanting, especially with the ravages that they might inflict on people like Lifers and Stranger. And to be fair, that doesn't tend to lead to a lot of nuance, doesn't really need it either, because that can work if the song's direction is clear. But on more than a few cuts here, things just get oddly muddled. Big Last Name, the most obvious example, telling the story of a girl looking to marry rich and yet winds up with said husband cheating on her in the end, which seems to point towards a lesson learned at the expense of gold diggers, but it feels like the connective tissue to conclude the song is just oddly absent. We're not getting a third act here. And what's strange is that this keeps happening. Desert Wind as our protagonist searching for lost gold, only to find the truth is in that journey, the desert wind, which fine, I get it, but for as much as Cody Jinks will lionize the journey, he seems kind of selective in which are worthwhile, and seems to recoil away from finding that destination for his protagonist, which is loaded into a lot of the subtext of the more personal road song Can't Quit Enough, and it's a lot more prominent on 7th Floor. But that song falls in weird territory too. It wants to demonize the industry that elevates him, and he's very consciously aware of how it will eventually potentially lead to his fall, but the hook of the song shows that it was clearly worth it to get to this person, get to this destination, which thematically feels at odds with the rest of the album, elevating the journey that's more rewarding. And I get that there's room for ambiguity in these conversations, sure, but this isn't morally complex framing or added nuance so much as mixed messaging in the songs that doesn't really mesh with the scope and style of the writing. At least to me. But beyond that, and some lyrical nitpicks of him seemingly overcompensating for I'm Not the Devil by cramming in a few too many words into the poetic meter, where the last album could occasionally just have too few. Again, it's a good album. I'm not about to call it great or say that it's anything close to being better than his best. It's not. But it's not his worst either, and Cody Jinks albums have always had a slow build for me, and I reckon this will fall into a similar category. It will probably grow on me more, albeit a little bit less so given some of the production issues, which I can't really ignore. Still, some really solid cuts, which is why I'm giving it a very strong 7 out of 10 and a recommendation, but a bit of a cautious one. Fans will enjoy it for sure, but newcomers, start with I'm Not the Devil and Less Wise, and then go from there if you're curious. You probably won't be disappointed, so yeah, check it out. So yeah, thanks a lot for watching. I'd like to like and subscribe, I'd be more than grateful. Not a ton to say about this record, but it's good. You want to buy it? Link down there below. And I got the poll up there. I'm looking forward to all you diehard Cody Jinks fans telling me I'm wrong, although it seems like most of you from the comments I've seen have had similar criticism, so it'll be interesting to see where that goes. Beyond that, anything else I might be able to do to improve my presentation, I'm all ears. And if you guys want to get involved in my scheduling process, link to my Patreon is right down over there, where 3 times a week you guys get to vote on my schedule, and once a week for the higher tier contributors, you guys get to add albums, movies, or even a top 10 list to that schedule. More details right there. If you want to see my schedule, it's on my Instagram, link down there below. But till then, I'm Mark, you're watching Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.